It is the 23rd of July, 2023. This is an introduction on the topic of the advice process as efficient collaboration. And I am very delighted to be here. I love this topic. I enjoyed putting together the slides, and I would love to hear from a few people. The way I like to start these is to hear, especially from people that I haven't met yet. So if you are joining for the first time anything that I do, at least live, then you are the person I would most like to hear from. And I would like to know, what is it about the topic that brought you here? What did you see or hear that is meaningful for you to want to be part of? That nourishes me and gives me kind of like an orientation of where to put my attention. Is anyone up for sharing? Just raise your hand. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, Mickey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I joined your Facing Life as One class before last year, but I'm new to NGL. So the reason why I joined this is because I actually read Frederic Laloux's Reinventing Organization, and I loved it. And also did his week, also the program for climate change. But I'm really interested in seeing the real life experience within NGL, like what worked, what didn't work, what are the hurdles. Because in his book, it's run from a very corporate perspective where everyone gets paid and it's their job. And how do we do it in real life if we want to do it within a gift economy? That'll be really fascinating. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? What brought you here? I'd love to hear from 2 or 3 people. Oh my goodness, there's a face here that I haven't seen probably in 15 years. You know who you are because you just unmuted. Hi, Kathy.
Yeah. Hi. Well, as you know, Mickey, I've been following your work for years. And I've been following the NG. Oh, yeah. And so I have time to get involved again. And I've been following the NGL community and your work with I want to say abolishing the patriarchy, and so, yeah, I'm glad to be here and it's good to see you.
Thank you. Anything else about what drew anyone to the topic in particular? Especially people who've not been in contact before. Melanie.
I'm joining here from Austria, and I got to know of those sessions from an external consultant that we're currently working with in our organization. And I'm super curious, as someone else already said, how things are currently working in practice, because we are also thriving with the aspirations of Laloux in our organization and are currently on a way of transforming processes and our organizational culture in that direction.
Thank you. Cool. I'm very getting from what people are saying that people want practical things, and I'm very much hoping to be able to offer this. Nino, did you want to say something? No, you're unmuted. And because there are quite a number of people here that have not been to these before, I want to say that I have a slide deck. I have slides that I've prepared. And my way, yes, Cheryl.
Sorry, let me just say the very beginning items in case people aren't familiar. Mickey doesn't see the chat during the session, so just to let you know that. And also, I'll put a message in the chat about if you want to participate in breakout groups or do not. If you do not, if you could put an equal sign in front of your name, and I will put the instructions in the chat right now.
Thank you. So I love to be in conversation with people. I don't like to lecture. My experience of lecturing is an experience of separation. And at the same time, I know that having some sense of order through the material is really helpful, both for me and for other people. So I've developed an approach that is integrative. I show a couple of slides and then I come back for dialogue. And I show a couple of slides and I come back for dialogue, and that seems to work and I enjoy it very much. And many people so far have enjoyed it. So that's what I am planning to do today. And I also want to say that there is no implicit requirement that people already know what the advice process is. I'm going to explain it from scratch. And I'm hoping to be able to explain it in a way that won't be boring for people who already know what it is and will be clear enough for those who don't. And for those who already do know the advice process, it might be confusing to think of it as collaboration, because in the end, there's one person who makes the decision. So stay tuned for that, because I see the advice process as a very choreographed pathway of collaboration that reduces a lot of noise from collaboration, and I'll get to that as we go. So I like to start from vision in everything that I do. And my vision of how I want things to be overall in the world is extremely simple. That's part of what's painful, to hold a vision that is really simple and then see very complicated things get in the way of making it happen. In the vision that I have, we put on the table all the relevant needs, impacts, and resources that are necessary to make a decision. Having that information and having a purpose supports us in reaching collective wisdom. And collective wisdom is what our big brains evolved for, being able to solve complex problems in a way that actually works for everyone. And what that means is we use the resources that are available. We don't use resources that don't exist. That's wishful thinking that people do. We must do this. The government should. This means calling on resources that don't actually exist. So we use available resources. We orient to the needs that have been identified. We try to minimize unwanted impacts, and we stay within purpose. That's my vision. It's simple. Instead, what we have now is what my late sister Inbal coined a term. She called it crisis of imagination. We are stuck in an either-or paradigm. We have two models of decision-making that don't work: command and control and consensus. Those are the two either-ors. And people try to patch together all kinds of things, including majority vote, which to me is a complex version of command and control, because there's still always a minority that is being told what to do. And moreover, not only this, because it's called democratic, they have to do what the decision of the majority is and feel good about it, because we use the democratic process. We have come to believe that we either have efficiency or collaboration, and we can't have both. That either there is like some kind in the end of unilateral decision making, or else we are going to be in endless process that never ends. The best example of which, to me, painfully, was the Occupy movement, where groups came together, made a decision. The following week, someone who wasn't there came to the meeting and they said, I wasn't there, I don't like the decision, and they had to start all over, which is highly demoralizing. So the reason why we stay stuck in this crisis is we don't actually have a whole lot of models of what works. We've lost them. We've lost them long ago, enough that we don't know them. We are stuck within a place of internalized powerlessness. We have come to believe, unless we have been trained and groomed to be the few people in the world who actually have decision-making power, we have been trained to believe that somebody else makes the decision and we are not that somebody else. We don't trust ourselves, we don't trust others. And when you add to it power differences, we just don't know what to do. So that's the situation that I'm starting from. There's this vision of simplicity, there's the reality that we're facing, and then what are we going to do with that? And this is the 2 slides that I wanted to show, and now I'm back to have a conversation. Questions, comments, reactions, thoughts,
Mickey,
insight.
can I ask a quick clarifying question? Can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Yeah.
You've said in the past, predict and control. I've heard you say command and control today. How come?
They are different things. They're different things. Command and control is how you make decisions. Predict and control is how you orient to life.
Okay.
They are interrelated, they're similar, but they're not the same thing. They're not in the same context. Does that help?
Hold on, let me repeat. So predict and control is orienting to life, and controls around decision making. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. It does make sense, but can you give an example?
I would rather not stay focused on this because it's a small
Okay,
part.
fine.
It's a
That's
small
fine.
part of this. If at the end this is still alive for you and I'm done with the slides, then let's do it then.
All good, Mickey. I'll simply.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments? Does this resonate?
Okay, thank you, Mickey.
Does this resonate? Do you recognize what I'm talking about from your experiences? What does it bring up? What questions arise? Anything that is confusing? It's going to take you a while to warm up. It sometimes happens. Sometimes people get involved in conversation right away, and sometimes it takes a few slides. So I'm going to keep going. And the next piece is that I want us to move in the direction of integration from where we are. We are stuck in the bind, the either or bind, the loss of trust bind, the separation bind, the scarcity bind, all of these things. We're stuck there. And from here, we can take steps in the direction of the vision. That's the general way that I like to function. Instead of seeing the mountain of overwhelming obstacles, I look for where's the path that allows me to climb the mountain, even a little baby step at a time. So some of the things that this entails is that we need efficient processes for collecting information. And what we usually know to do is endless discussions. And I don't want to have endless discussions. I want to have exactly the right amount of discussion that's needed to get the information that is relevant to the decision. So I'm giving here 2 examples of what I mean by efficiency. One is we've been trained, if we don't want the command and control model, we have to hear every last voice. I imagine all of you have been to meetings where there are lots of people and there's this idea of hearing every voice, and you hear the same thing multiple times, sometimes even in the same words from 15 different people who are not really adding to what we already have heard. So I made this discovery that what is important is to hear all the needs, not all the voices. Imagine somehow that it was technologically possible to hear from 8 billion people. We're not going to have 8 billion needs. We're probably going to have about 300 needs. And that's the way that I look at it. We don't need to hear from everyone. We need to give everyone a sense that they matter. We want all the needs to be included, but not to necessarily hear from each person. So that's one example. A second example is that when we are about to make a decision, the most relevant information to know whether we are already there or not is not how many people agree with it. That doesn't actually give us information, because we can be in a room of 50 people and we can ask people, raise your hand if you agree with this decision. And let's say that 48 people do. So you see 48 hands going up, and it's very hard to see the 2 hands that are not in agreement. And those 2 hands are the only ones that have relevant information about how to close the gap between where we are and the decision. So I like to ask for dissent rather than for agreement, which turns a lot of people's thinking upside down. And I also need to know that we only have the amount of resources that we have. We don't have infinite resources. So we need to know what level of dissent makes sense to engage with. So just as an example, if the decision is about what pizza we're going to order, the decision is going to live for a couple of hours at most. When we make the decision, we order the pizza, we eat it, we're done. Maybe somebody gets a stomachache, another 24 hours. But if we're going to make a decision about what direction an organization is going to take for the next 5 years, we need to lower the bar on hearing dissent, because if we don't integrate dissent, the impacts will be long lasting. So this is just some of the considerations of what I mean about efficient processes for collecting information. So I get only the information that I need, not more than that. And by the way, I have decided to reclaim the word efficiency and challenge all those who think that efficiency is about time. Time is just one variable. Efficiency, as it is in science, and I have an engineer here looking at me, and I think he can confirm, efficiency is about the ratio between input and output. You want to have the most output for the amount of input that you put into something, not how long it takes. That's only one small variable. You want to have the least amount of waste. That's how I most like to think about efficiency. So also to move towards integration, and I'm not yet talking about the advice process, but those of you who know about the advice process can see that I'm going in that direction. Not everyone is relevant to every decision. For example, if we're going to paint a certain room and there are 5 people that are staying in that room and 100 people that are not staying in that room, the people who are staying in that room are much more relevant to the decision than the 100 of people who are not staying in that room. Maybe 3 of them regularly come into this room, so we might want to include them too. Maybe there are a couple of people who have a particular artistic design bent and they like to be involved in such decisions and to influence them. So you would have maybe 8 people, but not 100. So it's important to know who is relevant for the decision, and that comes in very specifically within the advice process. Third, mistrust, pervasive mistrust in our societies interferes with integration. I want us to do decision-making processes in such a way that they build trust as we go forward. And you build trust not by agreeing with people. You build trust by giving them a sense that they matter, by giving them a sense that what they say and what they care about is going to be included, that they're not going to be overridden, they're not going to be imposed upon. Next, if you want integration, people need to be empowered to participate. I'm imagining at least some of you have been in positions of leadership. You go to a group and you want input. You ask for input and people don't give it to you. They just say, that's fine. What you want to do is fine. And you know that they haven't engaged. Why? Because they don't feel empowered to participate. So we need to create ways for people to have that experience of feeling empowered. And people might feel disempowered regardless of how much power they actually have. In fact, there are many people who have lots of power and don't actually feel that they have power. In fact, if you look, for example, at the relationship between parents and children, it's very clear that the parents are the ones in power, but parents don't feel that way. And there's research that suggests that a lot of child abuse comes from parents who don't feel themselves powerful and experience their children as overwhelming them. And the last thing is, since there's almost always power differences, if you want to integrate, you need to attend to power differences in how you make decisions. All right, that was dense. So I'm going to pause after just one slide and invite questions. 615, is that Beth? Area code 615, you're muted. Your hand is raised, but you're still mute. Okay, there you are. Is this Beth? And now I'm not hearing you.
Yeah, okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I forgot that I had not unmuted myself. I had my hand up, but I forgot to unmute. So, yes, it's me, and I just have to say I'm so excited by everything you've said so far, Mickey. I'm feeling excited and hopeful and resonating, and there's something just kind of zinging inside me because, excuse me, one of the first NVC classes I ever went to, somebody made a comment about the temperature in the room. And I think we were trying to approach it, or the facilitator was trying to approach it through the consensus method. And I promise you, we spent an hour and a half trying to figure out what to set the thermostat at. Drove me crazy. I was surprised I ever went back to another NVC meeting.
Yeah, by the way, I have a permanent solution to the thermostat problem.
Yeah?
Yes, I do. The solution is this. You set the thermostat to something, and whatever it's set to, no one touches it for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, if it's too cold or too hot for someone, they change it and they say that they changed it, and you start counting the 10 minutes again. And the reasoning behind it is you then don't need a discussion, and by and large, we can survive for 10 minutes in a temperature that is not comfortable. That's my solution, but that's not what you were trying to talk about. I just wanted to brag about it because I think it's very ingenious. And it's integrated.
Yeah. And I also wanted to touch on what you said about efficiency. And of course, we are all brought up to connect it with time, and time is an element, but so much of it is also energy. And so I love the idea of input and output. And sometimes it's not the time I put into something, but the energy, the brain power, the physical energy that makes it more inefficient. So, so I guess that's what I want to. Oh, and one more thing is that my daughter is 31 years old, and I'm still realizing the power difference, which I never felt, but she always did. Yes. And So yeah, so really appreciating you bringing those things.
That's very often the case, that the person who has the power, and I know that for myself too, because I am in a position of leadership in many places, and it's easier to imagine that the power difference doesn't exist when you have it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not feeling it.
Exactly. Thank you. Nancy?
Hi again, Mickey. I love the idea of listening to every need, not every voice. But I guess maybe but some people are not aware of their needs, and especially if we work with people who maybe haven't practiced self-awareness practices or NVC practice, then I don't know if you're going to talk about it later or not about that. Yeah.
Not necessarily. I will just say briefly, when I'm talking about listening to every need and not to every voice, I'm not talking about NVC needs. I'm talking about needs in a much looser sense, as in what is important to a person. And if I am the one who is in one form or another guiding the decision-making process, I see it as my responsibility to hear what's important to a person and support integration by going from what might be a controversial position to what I call the non-controversial essence, which is similar to a need, but not at all the same. I'm not going to get more into that at this point, because that's a slightly different pathway. If we run through all the slides and it's still alive for you, I'll be happy to get into it at the end. Is that okay with you?
Yes, I'm sure that's another big can of worms. So thank you.
Yes. Pam, you had your hand up and you changed your mind?
I did, because I'm not sure if this is a particularly useful comment, but those slides, that last slide was great. I mean, I love all of the ideas, and I'm not sure. I mean, for instance, the last item, power differences. It's like each one of those is a whole class, at least.
Yes, I'm well aware of that. I generally see what I do as there's like one tapestry, and I zoom in on one part of the tapestry, and I mentioned related relevant parts, but I'm not going to get into everything in every time I do a presentation. So it's like I'm weaving something together.
Yeah, and so that slide was like a framework, but we're not going to expect to learn all of those pieces today. We're going to see how they fit into what you're teaching today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go back. And now it's finally the beginning of what is the advice process. I needed to do this context first, because if I don't do this context first of thinking, framing things as elements and processes for integrative decision-making, then the advice process is like a random thing hanging from nowhere. And I want to hang it from a place of awareness of where we are at this point in human evolution and how vitally necessary it is to relearn how we make decisions. So the advice process was created by a man named Dennis Bakke. Don't ask me how to pronounce it. He was the CEO of a company of 40,000 people that is one of the case studies that Frederic Laloux did his research from. And the term was popularized by Frederic Laloux. I don't think there are many people in the world who have heard of Dennis Bakke, but I like to give credit to source, and he's the source. Frederic Laloux is the amazing, awe-striking vessel through which this wisdom came to millions of us, not the coiner of the term. And what it is a really simple idea, which is you distribute decision-making fully. Everyone can make any decision. Just think about it, any decision. And in the book, Reinventing Organizations, Frederic Laloux offers examples of a person making a decision that involved, I think, $2 million that the founder of the company was not happy with. And he still made the decision. That's not a small thing. The key is you don't make the decision randomly. You make it after seeking and engaging in good faith with advice from relevant others, and we'll get into what relevant others are. And it's absolutely key that it is in good faith. It's a trust-based practice. You cannot run the advice process in a place where there isn't enough trust for it. And even more amazing is that the advice received is not binding. You're actually free to go against the advice, but that's not lightweight. When you go against the advice, there is a big weight on your shoulders. And if you repeatedly go against the advice of others, you might build a reputation, and through feedback, you might not find yourself any more welcome in the context where people don't trust that you will take their needs seriously. But there's nothing in the process itself that binds you or forces you to do anything specific with the advice that you receive, except engage with it in good faith. So I want to pause here, even though it's a short slide, and see if there's any lack of clarity. If anyone doesn't get any part of it, I would like to cover it, because this is the basis for everything that comes later. Yes, Dylan.
So when you spoke about advice process here, you said they were free to not take their advice, and then you said they might be not trusted to take their needs seriously. And so in the advice process, the person is sharing their needs of the situation, what they would like to see, or what they think is best. I'm just wondering.
We'll get to how this happens in a moment.
It's more about, are they sharing their needs? That word you used threw me just a little, like, is that what they're sharing during the advice process? I'm not that well right now, so I'm just kind of curious.
Like,
but if you
think of it like this. Think of it like this. I'm trying to run an advice process. I included you in the people who are relevant to the decision. I'm seeking your advice. You give me your advice. In whatever form you give me your advice, you're actually always speaking to me about your needs. Even if you don't know your needs, even if you don't know to say them, if you don't think about needs, you're always telling me what your needs are. If I don't integrate in any way what you put out, then you're going to have the experience that I don't care about your needs. Do you see what I mean?
I do. Thank you very much for that direct, clear statement that whatever someone is expressing, whether they know it or not, they're expressing their needs. And always. That tending to those or being attentive to those shows that you care and that they matter. And that was very important. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shana?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could make a little more specificity on what does good faith mean? To engage in good faith.
I'm appreciating the question. I think it might be clearer when we get into the specifics of what you do at each step. But I can give one example. if I get advice and I don't close the relational loop, let's say you were one of the people who gave me advice, and I just made some decision that doesn't integrate what you said to me, and I didn't close the loop with you, it will feel to you like I didn't engage in good faith. If I say, Shana, I read your input and it's beyond capacity to integrate it because of A, B, C, and it's not on purpose to do it this way or that way because of C, D, E. Even if I don't take in your input, you will have a sense that I engaged with it in good faith. This is one example. Yeah?
Yeah, so it's leaning toward the togetherness rather than separation.
That's one way of looking at it. I like that. Yeah, thank you. Natalie?
Hello.
Hello.
I want to connect, I think the first few slides with the last one. So when you are asking for advice, you are, whatever they're saying, you know, and you're capturing the non-controversial essence. But one of the questions got to be the needs and the impacts, so that you can
not
then
necessarily. We are not necessarily going to ask for it always in the same way. We'll get to my thoughts about how you ask for advice in a few slides.
Okay.
This was just like a very high level overview.
Gotcha.
Luca?
Would you say that it only makes sense to have an advice process within a system, like having agreements of distributed decision-making, and not just like a singular one, like having a restorative circle, for example? People do it like once without having the context.
Yes, in general, even though I think that probably many people didn't understand your question, and that's okay. And I would say this, I think, I haven't tried, but my intuition tells me that it is possible to use the advice process in a command and control organization if you have enormous capacity to engage with people who have more power than you and do it in a way that they will experience you as respecting them and respecting their authority. And I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm. In that case, you wouldn't actually be entrusted with taking a decision. You would kind of hope that will, by the end of the process, somehow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can run an advice process and make it so compelling that by the end of it, I will be promoted.
Love that. Yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm gonna go back to the slides. And now look at the steps of the advice process. And by the way, this is the last slide that has visuals. The person who supports me with visuals, Sabrina, didn't have more energy or capacity to do more. And I am so happy to have even 3 of them. But I want you to not have expectations of more drawings. It's going to be just words beyond this slide. So the first step, and again, this is an overview, and then each of these is going to have a slide later. The first thing is identifying that there is a need to make a decision. It is amazing how easy it is to not recognize that a decision is needed. So that is a first step, and it's how an advice process starts. Second step is, who do I ask advice from? There are specific guidelines which came from Dennis and Frederic, and which I had the audacity to modify, which I'll get to later. There's choosing when to ask for advice. You can ask for advice before you start something. You can ask for advice when a process is half-baked. when it's near done, and there are benefits and drawbacks to wherever you make the decision. There's choosing how to ask for advice. There's integrating the input, and there's making the decision. Those are the steps of the advice process. It's pretty simple, the sequence. I imagine it makes sense. So much so that I want to take one more slide with this round. And that is about what it means to identify a need and where that takes you. So this is not exhaustive, but several ways that you can figure out that there is a need to make a decision. One is you experience a problem. Now watch how in the usual world of organizations, when you experience a problem, the pathway that's available to you is not to make a decision. You can complain, you can absorb it and swallow, you can gossip about your boss to other people, you can leave the organization, you can do nothing and just lay low. There's so many things you can do. None of them are empowered. Recognizing that a problem is an opportunity to make a decision is a super empowered state. Another way that you can recognize a need is you receive feedback, either personal or to your team or to the organization as a whole, that something is not working. You yourself didn't notice it, but somebody else did. And a third one is there's no problem, but you see that there's something possible. There's a possible way of functioning that's going to make things much better. That's another way that a need can arise. You will see me do this because I have mosquitoes in the room and I don't want to be bitten. And they go to that particular place on the wall. Second step, you can identify a problem, know that a decision needs to be made, and still not feel empowered. So in order to actually take action, you need to find a sense of agency. You need to know that you, this organism that is you, has the capacity to move and take action, and you trust yourself to do that. Every infant has that. Every infant has that, and it's taken away from us. It's a lifetime journey for many of us to restore to us that sense of agency. Then the other thing is, in order to take action that is integrative and useful, you need to also trust the whole and care for the whole. Otherwise, you might take action that will resolve the problem by doing something that works for you, but has disastrous impacts elsewhere. All right, gonna pause here, go back and ask again for questions, comments. How is the pace? Is it clear enough? Pam.
Mickey, I'm having a little problem with the top of that slide, identify a need, because identifying a need to make a decision is very different than identifying a need as we generally use it in NVC.
Yes, this is not, I'm not talking about NVC needs here. And there's no need to know NVC in order to be part of this and to understand what I'm saying. In fact, it might make it difficult because people understand things through a particular lens, and words have meaning that is broader than the meaning assigned to them within NVC.
True, but identifying a need is really different than identifying a need to make a decision. That's such a small subset. In fact, some of what you were listing sounded like if someone, like you were talking about, well, one thing you could do is gossip about it or something. That sounds like a conflict, like you're identifying that there's a conflict or a problem, but that doesn't mean that there's a decision needed necessarily.
And what I am saying is I want to reinscribe a problem as an opportunity to make a decision to care for the problem. Exactly that. Shifting from all these ways that we attend to problems now to thinking, oh, there's a problem. It's time to make a decision. That's the seed of an advice process. I recognize there's something that needs action. That's how it functions.
Could the decision be, I want to engage in a conflict, in a conflict resolution process, for instance? Like, could that be the decision?
No, that's different, because when I'm talking about a decision, I'm talking about creating some change in how things operate, in how things function. A conflict process is different from a decision-making process.
So, okay, so I want to just suggest that it might be useful as you go forward with this to clarify that statement of the need for a decision. Do you see what I mean?
I'm not sure. I would like to, because I'm still not sure what I'm saying that isn't clear, unless you hang on to the way that the needs are identified within NVC.
No, I just mean, it's not that important. I just mean, I want that slide to say, identify the need for a decision or for something, so that it's not so general.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, I'll think about it and see what emerges. Thanks. Matua?
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say from my side is that every infant is born like with a kingdom, or every infant is born like a king and a queen. And so when they're a king and a queen, they know exactly what they want. Like when they're born, they want nutrients, sleep, and they make these decisions, and the only way they know how is, and I get that from you. No, I got that information from you. So that's the decision making. They already know. They're just not too sure how to articulate it in their way or shape or form or something like that. That's how I see this. Mm-hmm. We're born with everything we need. And we know what it is. We just don't know how to say it as an infant.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That trust and that I still have that in me. I trust that I know exactly what I need, but I just don't know how to say it yet, because I haven't attempted to try and do something to create something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Gonna go back to the next part, which is, now comes the part that is specific to the advice process. And this is where I'm going to include what is in the original advice process and two additions that I add to it. One is, the first thing is only invite the people who are relevant. But we said this, and I want to say it again, only the people who are relevant. There are two groups of people that were identified by Dennis and Frederic, and two additional groups that I identify that I think make the process more robust. The first is those who are specifically impacted. And the word specifically is important here, because in some ways you can say, especially if you study complexity theory or anything like this, you would say any decision that anyone makes anywhere has an impact on everyone and all forms of life. A butterfly over here can do this, and there will be a storm 3,000 miles away. Yes, that's true. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is the people who in specific ways that are relevant to the work that they're trying to do, to the purpose that people have, that this decision, if it happens, might impact them. That's the first group. The second group is those who have specific knowledge, expertise, experience, intuition, whatever it is that is relevant to the topic. So if you remember in the example that I gave about painting a room, I said there may be 2 or 3 other people who have particular knowledge about interior design or whatever, and even though they're not going to be in that room, it makes sense to invite them to weigh in, because what they say is useful information for making the decision. So those are the 2 original groups. I add 2 other groups. One is those who have necessary resources. They might have the resources and not be impacted and not have any specific relevant knowledge. And still, if they have resources that are necessary for the implementation, it would be useful to hear from them. And in low trust environments, there's a 4th group that I would suggest adding, is those who have the capacity to interfere with the process and with what ends up happening and make it impossible to implement a decision. Those are the 4 groups of people. And then the other question is, how wide do I go? And there's no right answer to such a question. There are different things that you can do. One is, if you can start with a small group of people and ask them who else is needed. Another is, if there's low trust. Oops, I have a typo there. It says case, but it means cast a wider net. So invite more people if it's low trust. There's another thing that you could do, is you can invite many people and give them criteria to self-select. If you don't know the group, you don't know who is actually in which group, you can give them criteria to self-select to decide whether to give input or not. And the next, I think I'm gonna stop here. I also want to correct the typo. Okay, it's not gonna be easy to do it now, so I'm not gonna do it now.
Can you put that slide back for 1 sec?
You want the slide up again?
Yeah, the last one. Thank you.
You know you're gonna get it afterwards.
I know, but they go into a specific. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Beth.
Are you using the term advice and input in the same way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's called the advice process because it's kind of like a simple framework to think of it as asking for advice. But really what you're asking for is specific forms of input on a decision that you want to make.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to know that they are the same, because if they weren't, I was going to be really confused.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Wondering if this gave you enough information such that if you were going to make a decision somewhere in some organization, group, community, family, whatever that you're part of, you have a sense that you could think your way about who to ask. Alper? Alper is in the process of creating a major advice process within NGL, so he's listening very carefully.
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to hear from you some indicators of high trust field and low trust field.
How would I know that I'm in a low trust field?
Yeah, like how can I do assessment before starting an advice process?
If there's enough trust in the field or not?
Yeah.
I love the question. I've never thought of it. I like it when people ask me questions that previously seemed self-evident to me and I thought were self-evident for everyone. Because I have a sense, we are in an environment, we feel it. We feel, is there enough trust or not? We feel it. But you're saying, no, maybe not. Maybe we need to ask questions. So one of the things that you can do is you can look, for example, at how often there is judgmental language that people use when talking about each other. The more frequent is the judgmental language, the lower the trust. Now you're going to say, hey, but people talk in judgmental language all the time. That's right. We live in a collective global low trust environment. And sometimes we are able to form organizations or communities or families that are islands of higher trust. But overall, we live in a low trust environment.
So that like adds to my question. There's a thing that's flowing from me, which says like also sharing of vulnerability in the field is an indicator
of high trust.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Transparency, even without vulnerability, transparency is an indicator of high trust. See, in command and control organizations, in my mind, by definition, are low trust environments. If in a high trust environment, there's no need to control anything. So if it's a command and control environment, it's a low trust environment already. And in those environments, information doesn't get shared. From top to bottom, it doesn't get shared because those in positions of leadership and power don't trust the workers to be able to think, to be able to care for resources, to be able to use the information well. So they're afraid and they hold on to it. And those at the bottom, the workers, don't share information with the people in management because they're afraid it will be used against them. The most astonishing example of that I heard of is there was a company that was producing cosmetics. It was organic cosmetics to boot. And there was a defect in the process. And the workers that discovered the defect were afraid to tell the management because they were afraid that they would be punished, even though it wasn't anything that they did. They just discovered it. They didn't say anything. The problem was discovered when the product was being put on trucks to be delivered. That's when it was discovered. And at that time, it was $100,000 of damage because all of it had to be thrown out and redone. Whereas if they had shared the information earlier, the problem could have been fixed and maybe it would have been $5,000 to fix the machine. So definitely how much information flows, all of these things can give you indicators. I would also venture a guess, though I don't know if that has been checked statistically, that the higher the gap between the highest salary and the lowest salary, the smaller the trust. But that's just my intuitive hypothesis. Is this enough, Albert? I would also say, Albert, that within NGL, even though we have conflict fields, and even though we have a lot of challenges, I think people don't take in how much of a super high trust environment it is, even with all our challenges relative to what happens elsewhere. Is it lower trust than I would wish it to be? You bet. and still, I think it's a hugely high trust environment in a variety of ways. Crystal.
Yeah, I'm just loving this and Alper's question. And it really speaks to me to the general rule that the level of consciousness of an organization cannot exceed the level of consciousness of its leader. And if you're in this command and control environment, whether it's in an institution or an organization, where could we, like you did with convergent facilitation, where can we have the greatest impact in applying this advice process in the organization? Where do you see that?
I would say one simple thing is in command and control organizations, if you are a manager of any kind, often enough within your sphere of influence, in other words, from you downward, you have quite a bit of leeway about how you function, so long as you produce. If you deliver your quota, if the product comes out well or whatever, you're not going to be very examined about how you got there. Upwards takes hugely more capacity than downwards. Helpful?
Yeah, thank you. I think it also raises the ability of those who engage in it to understand the needs on a deeper level. So yeah, it's how do we get up to the C-suite and up to the president? And yeah.
Not now. We don't have the collective capacity to change that field yet. I'm saying we, I mean humanity. I don't mean we, those of us who are here. I mean, we haven't figured out how to come together. And that's true collectively. It's not like there's some bad guys who are preventing us from doing things. We haven't figured out how to collectively move in the direction of togetherness and vision. And given that that's the situation, we can only act within the sphere of influence that we have. All right, back to the slides. Now comes the when to ask for advice. I said already about many things, and I'll say it again, there are no right answers. There are only considerations that we need to decide. When I ask for advice earlier in a process, it increases trust, and it's easier to integrate. And it requires a lot more work of others. Think about it like this. If I ask you to write something, it takes much more effort than if I ask you to give feedback on something that I wrote. That's usually the case. So if I go to a person and say, hey, I have this problem, can you give me input about how to solve the problem? I'm putting a lot of weight on them. If I come and say, I have an idea of how to solve this problem, would you give me feedback on this idea? It's easier. It puts the work on me rather than on others. So in that sense, when I ask for the feedback later, for the input later, it's easier to know what to respond to. And simultaneously, it's like, okay, you've already thought about it. You didn't leave me much to say. Never mind. You clearly are not wanting to hear from me. So I'm not going to give you. I can't influence the process anymore. So there is this kind of trade-off. I could ask several times, and from experience, it is tiring for the field to be asked more than once. And with each successive iteration, fewer people respond. So these are things to consider, and there are probably other considerations. So that's this crop. Yes, Monique.
I wanted to call for a pause from the last slide. because the full impact of understanding that I can only act, and then collective capacity can only act within the sphere of influence that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so sad when I mean, there's so much mourning that comes up for me around the gap that is in that statement, and the gratitude for you for being here, offering an alternative, and also knowing that there's support, that reaching out for support is a way to navigate this. But I just wanted to take a break because it was just so heavy for me, and I would assume for maybe somebody else too.
Yeah. Anything else in my mind is thinking in illusions. And I think because we don't want to mourn, we go to illusions very easily. And the illusions can be something as simple as, we must stop the dying of children from hunger. We must stop it. Who are we talking to when we say that? I don't have the power to stop the hungry children from dying. I don't have the power to redirect the world's resources to go to those children. I don't. So it takes immense discipline to think, what is my actual sphere of influence and what can I do within that? That is the most effective use of my resources. So thank you. Yes. Is it Patricia or Patricia? I know I've asked you more than once and I don't remember.
It's Patricia. Thanks for asking. So I'm intrigued by this because anyway, it's very relevant to what I do for work. When you say asking more than once is tiring and makes it more. So I have somebody who continually comes to me asking a lot of questions, and I'm noticing there's some kind of balance between having them trying to think on their own first before bringing me in on the very beginning of it. But then, like you said, there's this trade-off, because the further they wait, the less, the further they wait, I don't have as much influence on what they're about to do. So, yeah. I mean, how do you, I guess I'm just imagining it's a very fuzzy dance between those two extremes.
It's a trial and error. Remember, the key word is integration. We're not in either or. We want to exit either or and move into integration. And the integration is, what's this, in this case, is what's the sweet spot within which there's enough self-trust and movement for that person and enough influence for you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
There's thinking to be done about it. There are no rules. That's one of the things that I more and more learn, is that we are so bombarded by so many problems that thinking through any of them takes energy and concentration that we've lost because we're waiting for rule books, for a right answer for things. It doesn't actually exist.
Can I tag on one extra thing?
Absolutely.
So in this dynamic with this person at work, I want them to think through these things more before coming to me, because they're very basic, and I want to spend my time on more advanced things. And if I don't help them at the beginning, what they say is I'm not collaborative with them. I'm not helping them. But another one of my colleagues says, your mom, you're being their mother, and you're not letting them fail on their own. And so it's like this catch-22.
So what I would do is, instead of trying to think in the moment when the person asks you a question, is this the right time, blah, 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 all of that in the moment. Instead of that, I would invite this person at another moment to have a conversation about the phenomenon and talk about it and say, you know, I experience you asking me more questions than my intuition says are necessary, and I want to get to the bottom of what is going on between us. Can you give me honest feedback about what is going on? Has it happened that in the past you didn't ask me questions, and then I was upset with you about a decision that you made? Is it this? Is it this? Just ask and find out what is really going on, and that will address the collaboration thing.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Beth?
Oh, yeah, this is fascinating. Something I've struggled with, whether to, you know, say what my thought is first and then get their feedback, or whether to just leave it open for their suggestions. And I have learned that it's different in different situations with different people, so there's not a right or wrong. There's an awareness. Also, what I learned, again, with my daughter, who I learned so much from, is there is a power, or sometimes there is a power over dynamic. And so for her, if I give my ideas first and then ask for her feedback, she defaults to what she perceives as a power under position and doesn't feel free to fully express what she thinks. So what and we did have that kind of talk, like you were saying, outside of the moment for what worked for her. And so now I understand that to support more power equality with her, I present the challenge and ask for ideas without presenting my ideas first and then asking for feedback.
Yeah. Yes. Cool.
So yeah, that power piece seems really relevant.
Yep. All right. I'm going to go back to the next slide. So the next piece, I think I didn't skip, yes, is how to ask for advice, and there are two parts to it. I'm giving you specific examples. This goes back to a question that came before. Do I ask for needs or any of that? I think it was Dylan that asked. These are the things to think about in terms of what to ask for. These are the kinds of things that I might want to know about, needs that I didn't consider. Because each of us is locked within our own perspective. We can have more or less power to do perspective taking. And however powerful we are in perspective taking, we are never other people. I've had a long-standing wish to be someone else for 5 minutes, to literally experience what it's like to be someone other than me for 5 minutes. I think it would teach me so much, but I don't think that's how life functions. We are always just the one person that we are for our whole life. So other needs I didn't consider. Any perspectives, ways, viewpoints of or things that might influence my thinking if I hear about them. Concerns, which are like impacts, ways that whatever I'm trying to do might influence people that I didn't think about, which is different from a need. It's a, how will this impact other people? Could there be ideas that people have about how to solve the problem that I'm trying to solve that might support creativity? are there other resources that exist which I didn't see that exist that might make it easier to solve the problem? That's one piece of the how to ask for advice, is what to focus on, what to ask about. I'm going to leave this here for a second for people. And I am going to now move to the second part of how to ask for advice, which is how to set the threshold for responses. And what I mean by threshold is how hard I make it for people to tell me that they don't like my idea. It's really that simple. And I'll illustrate it with a story. I was working at a company many years ago, and I was visiting that company. And while I was visiting, a salesperson came to the CEO who I was working with and said that there was a big contract that they had worked on for like 3 years, just came through. And so the CEO called the people that he was referring to as the team, which were about 25 people, didn't include the production workers, obviously, the team. So he called them into the office. They were all standing there. There was no place to sit down. They were all standing. And he stood there with a contract, with a pen in his hand, and said, "Is anyone not ready for me to sign the contract?" Can you imagine anyone saying anything in response to that? No. Now, this was the kind of contract where you work towards it for several years, but then when it comes, it's like, oh shit, do we actually have capacity to deliver? But all that thinking would not have come forward the way that he asked it. And I used what I call consultant privilege. A consultant can get away with things that an employee can never get away with. And I said, right in that tense moment, I said, I don't know if anyone is not ready to sign, for you to sign the contract, but I don't think they would feel free to say it, given the way you asked. I would suggest you ask differently. Why don't you ask, does anyone have any concerns you want me to address before I sign the contract? And before I finished asking that question, 5 hands were raised. And then he addressed all their concerns. In the process, changed the terms of the contract. More hands went up. People left the room with a sense of collective holding, of a really big challenge to address rather than being put upon to do something. And the most amazing thing is the salesman came to the CEO and said, I'm giving back 1/3 of my commission. I know people don't believe such things happen. Giving back 1/3 of my commission, I want to improve the profit margins, and the level of collaboration that I just saw inspires me to do this. So, I wrote an article to the New York Times about this, and I included the piece about the salesman, and the editor made me take it out. She didn't make me. She left me with the option of taking it out or not publishing the piece. And her reasoning is, it's over the top. And I was so discouraged because collaboration, generosity, goodwill are over the top. Embezzling, if the person embezzled 1/3 of the commission, that would not have been over the top. That would have been okay to include in an article. So that's a deep lesson. So where you put the threshold communicates to people how ready you are to hear from them. And there are various considerations that go into it. And you will ask differently depending on your conclusion. So do you actually have capacity to integrate? If you don't have capacity to integrate, don't ask for feedback. Make a smaller decision that influences fewer people, ask fewer people, and move forward with less trouble. I'd want to ask for things that would be significant enough that I would want to stretch, not for like little niggles if I don't have, especially if I don't have the capacity or the organization doesn't have the capacity. If I make it harder for people to express their dissent, we would cover over divergence and won't know that something is happening. If I make it easy, it will overwhelm the process and we will never make a decision. So it's always weighing. And here is one of the places, one of the most important places where power considerations come in. The people with less power are automatically raising the threshold for expressing dissent. There are 50 people in the room. The 25 people who have less power are less likely to express dissent. So sometimes I have, in situations, asked different questions of different people. So I was once guiding a group in making a decision about something, and there were people at different levels. And I said something like, I only want to hear red flags from the managers, and I want to hear every last concern from the people in the field who are going to implement this. And that was a very fruitful discussion that emerged afterwards. All right. Back to you. Questions, comments? Other people who have not spoken yet, please participate. It makes it more fun and interesting for everyone, especially me. Is it even clear, these considerations about where to put the threshold? Is it clear, or is it so overwhelming that you don't even know what to ask? All right, Noor.
Hello, Mickey. I'm putting my video on. I think what's going on for me, I think there may be a question part, but as I'm listening to you, I'm like, I'm imagining if I'm in the position of that person who was the decision maker, who was like, said it the way he said it before you intervened. I'm guessing a lot of this is just a gap in skill. It's a skill deficit, because I can imagine for me, I just would feel afraid or overwhelmed that like I wouldn't be able to manage how many concerns that will come. I don't have that skill. And so it's not until like a facilitator, someone external comes that can kind of, has your skill, can hold the space. So it's just what's going on for me is I'm thinking a lot of it's not necessarily, I'm just seeing it's not negative intention. It's just some of it is just really like acculturation, conditioning, lack of skill.
Totally. Totally. In this particular case, I think it was both.
Yeah.
Because I worked with that company for 2 years and I was thrown out eventually. Wow. Because I was brought in, we agreed that I would come in and support institutionalizing collaboration within the company. And I believed that he meant the same thing as I mean when I say collaboration, but he didn't. So eventually it became too much for him.
So yeah. How do we navigate that? I mean, is it just, is it a lot of this just about skill building and showing what is possible? I'm guessing like it's both. It's about showing what is possible and skill building.
Yes.
Okay.
And it is also about people doing whatever the people at the top would need to do, the very difficult work of facing the fears and anxieties that keep them attached to control. It's not simple to choose to release control.
I felt that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to name one other quick thing. It was a former piece, so you may not want to get into it, but I found it really fascinating what you said earlier about the democratic process, how in the name of democracy, and if there's space or you feel this is the right time, I want to hear more from you about that, because I think that that's an illusion that we're fed, oh, look how good this is. And it's like, you're right, if you're in the minority, you have to just accept this forced consensus and accept this is like, oh, this is a doggy treat. And it's like, no, I've felt that way too, but it's been an unpopular opinion to voice. So I don't do it, but I'm so with you, Mickey, and it's extremely refreshing to hear you say that. I cannot tell you how refreshing it is.
Thank you. It's especially difficult when you're in a minority of 49.5%.
Yeah, you're referring to women?
No, I'm referring to political elections in multiple countries that have been super polarized.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Whew. Thank you, Mickey.
Natalie?
Yes, so the slide was written as input that can support and strengthen a decision, but I'm wondering if it comes from a problem. Can you start with the problem, saying we have a problem, and then go to advice, or
Sure,
okay.
That's what I mean by it will be very early in the process.
Okay.
And if you do that, you include a lot more people. The process will be more complex, will demand more of other people, and people may be tired enough that they won't get to the finish line, and there will be attrition.
And then I'm wondering, the questions are then a bit different, because it looks like the question are mostly geared towards a proposal that may have already been generated.
And I generally believe that having some proposal, some idea before you seek advice, that is my bias.
And lastly, I didn't see questions around impact, so maybe I didn't see it properly. So
Concerns.
Oh, what are your concerns? I didn't anticipate. Oh, impacts. Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right, back to the slides. I have 2 more slides to complete the first round. I wanted to leave room for questions, and before we do questions, I'm gonna give us a break. Okay. So now you did a process, you got your input, and now it's time to integrate it. You need to do something with the input. Asking for input and not integrating it is extremely demoralizing. So how do we engage with integrating? The first thing is, it can very easily end up feeling like an internal demand that I must integrate and wrestle with every last bit of impact that feedback input that has come to me to completion until the other person is satisfied. That is going to wear us out. Many of us fall into this trap. I want us to recognize what our capacity is and to stretch to the fullness of our capacity, but not beyond. Second, all good integrative decisions are not either or. If I go somewhere and say, if I frame a decision in terms of, do we do A or do we not do A, I constrain the field and reduce the amount of creativity. It is much more creative to move out of either or and go into trust that creative solutions are possible. Colleagues of mine many years ago were in Pakistan in a refugee camp of people from Afghanistan doing training in nonviolent communication. And the people who were there at the training were very excited about what they were learning and said, oh, we wish we had known this a while back. There might have not been war, blah, blah, blah. They were super excited. As a result of the excitement, some of them invited my colleagues who were both from the US to go with them to the mosque on Friday. And with all the talk about if we had known this, we wouldn't have gone to war. The instant one of them invited, somebody else said, how dare you invite Americans to the mosque? And 2 minutes later, they were up in arms at each other's throats about this. So my colleagues did a very careful process of trying to figure out what is going on, what's important to the people who want them to go into the mosque, and what's important to the people who want them to not go into the mosque. And the result of that was not that those people who didn't agree now agreed, or those people who agreed now agreed not to have them come. The result was a complex, carefully tailored decision that was, they come into the mosque, but they go into this special room, they dress this way, there's a line, there's this time or that time. It was a complex process of reaching something that could work for everyone. And usually, especially because we are a low trust, low capacity species, decisions beyond either or that are going to work for everyone are going to be more complex now. We don't have ease and simplicity for the most part, except in the islands of high trust. We need to remember that we cannot make any decision that has no impacts. There's this thing that I call impact paralysis, which often leads people to make no decisions because any decision is going to lead to impacts. So we need to accept we're going to have impacts, we'll receive feedback, we'll deal with the feedback later, and there will be some other decision, some other time, some other change that will take care of those impacts and will create other impacts. And there is habits of top down. It's like, okay, I got the input, now I'm just going to do what I want and not care about things, or too much care, which is again this impact paralysis. That's what I have to say about integrating input, and I'm curious to hear questions or comments about this. It's a complex moment, what to do with the input that comes and how to integrate enough and not too much. So I'm curious if anybody has any specific questions about it, which will help us get more concrete and practical. Yes, Pam.
I have questions about every single one. Well, maybe not the third one. How do we assess capacity? Even our own. Like, is that what you were talking about? Is our own capacity?
Yeah.
So that can be hard to.
I'll give you an example. I once talked with a friend many years ago, and I was telling her that I noticed that many times I end up listening to people too long, and I don't know how to tell when it's too long. And she said, the moment that the question arises, is it too long? It's already too long. That was super helpful.
Yeah, but it's hard to anticipate sometimes. Maybe just a question of practice.
Yes. And again, look to infants. They know instantly when they're out of capacity. They're done, they're done.
Okay,
Infants
and then
are really amazing teachers.
Then the second one about either or, it's very hard to help people see that either or is not the only way. I mean,
we're
do you
not
have
talking about other people. This one is for you. This is oriented to you, the person who initiated the process. You asked for advice. It's now your turn to integrate the input. You're not now doing something with other people, trying to convince them that either or is not good. It's trying to convince yourself that the either or that you've been trained into isn't actually helping.
Oh, that's not so hard. That's like just have that in my mind. Am I going to either or? How can I let go? And what was the last one on the slide? The last one I also had trouble with.
Do I remember? I'm going to bring it up again. The last one is, if you have habits of making top-down decisions, I don't think this is true of you. Just the way that I know you over the years, I don't think you're particularly prone to making unilateral decisions.
Okay, but I hear you. I hear what you mean. Like if to notice, just notice, am I doing this a lot? Let me counter
Do
that.
the other. Yeah.
Same with the too much care. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on this slide? All right. I'm going to go to the next one. And the next one is about making the decision. There comes a moment where it's just time to make a decision. And there are various options that I have at that moment. One is integrate the input, modify the original decision, and move forward. That's the simple pathway. Another pathway is seeing what I got the input from the input that comes to me. When I look at it, it's like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Moving forward with what I wanted to do is going to have so much impact, and or in order to not have those impacts, I would have to integrate and change so much. The energy that it would take me to do this is far more than the energy that it takes me to work around the current situation. I'll stick with the current situation. Poof, take away the proposal. No decision. This is a decision, but no change of the kind that I wanted to do. The third option is to recognize that some other process is needed that makes it possible for collective wisdom to arise through interactive mutual influencing processes, not just asynchronous process of getting input. We need to be together and work it out. There's too much complexity, too many variables, too much controversy. I'm getting opposing input. We need to come together and do something to generate collective wisdom. Those are the three options that I'm seeing. And this is the end of explaining the advice process. And I want to first see if there are a few questions, anything from anyone. Then I want to put you in small groups. Cheryl, do you know how to create small groups?
Yes, I'm working on groups of 3 to 4.
Yes. Yeah.
And you'll let us know how long.
I didn't hear the last thing you said.
And you'll let us know for how long?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I will. So first I want to hear if there are any questions, then put you in small groups. Within the small group, you decide whether you could decide you don't even want to meet as a group, or you might want to meet for the whole time, or you might want to divide between break and meet, but we will come back 30 minutes later. So first questions, Vanda. I saw your hand and then it disappeared, Vanda. Okay. Anyone else?
Sorry, I was just trying to change my name.
Okay. that didn't come across very clearly. Your internet may not be working well. Beth?
Could you clarify that third option again? In the slide, I mean, about.
Yeah. The third option for me is when I recognize that the problem is more complex than can be integrated by one person looking at input from others, that we actually need to come together live and collaborate through mutual influencing, not just one way influencing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Crystal?
Yeah, I actually have a need for a 5-minute break. And I was wondering if we could use that as an example of this process.
No, because I'm going to answer your question or maybe one more question, and then you will be in a small group, and within your small group, you can decide that you start with a 5, 10, 15-minute break and then have 15 minutes for the group. But if you want to try to run an advice process, a live advice process is too similar to convergent facilitation and will be complex, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question before we break? Okay. Then I want to give you instructions for what to do in the break if you want to follow the instructions. You're always free to do whatever you want to do, which is always true. In any situation, even when somebody tells you what to do, you're still free to choose what you're going to do. So there may be consequences to doing what you want to do. That is the life that we have. So my proposal is that one of you chooses a situation in which you might want to run an advice process. And you work out together how you would structure it, who you would ask. You get support from the other people in the group to think through what you would do and see what you come up with. And then when we come back, we can engage with questions that are actually relevant to specific situations that people are facing rather than abstract questions. That would be much more fun, I think, for all of us. Any questions before we break? If you're not clear what you would do during the break. So again, and the break is for 30 minutes, and you decide how much of it you want to take a full break and how much of it you want to work with other people on the suggestion that I gave you or on something else. And we come back here 30 minutes later. All right, Cheryl, go ahead. Thank you.
It'll just take a moment. I had a few recent requests to make changes. So this is 30 minutes total, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It'll be half a minute or so.
If anybody has any question or comment while Cheryl is working out the technology. You all have thoughts. I know that.
As soon as you're ready, and people may have questions. I think I've got what everyone requested. If I don't, we'll
move people around.
Yeah, let me know. Or you can
Okay.
leave the room if you didn't intend to be there. Okay, are we all set? All right, 30 minutes.
All right, we're back. And there's no new material except what will arise through conversation. So you are welcome to bring in your questions ideally based on a specific situation that you discussed in your group, or more general questions are also welcome. This is where it changes from somebody telling you the answers to us exploring together. Pam, I'm going to take other people first. I trust you're okay with that because I want to distribute who speaks. Shana?
Yeah. Thanks. I think I'm trying to call this down to, it's how you worked when Alper asked for these criteria for assessing high and low trust environments and how, because you want to work with them. I started at identifying the need, and it's choosing to take action is finding a sense of agency and self-trust, and leaning on trust and care for the whole. As you said, we're in a low trust environment. So like the low trust environment is in here, the internalized oppression.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
And I think my question was around discerning how can I trust when it's the flow of life is happening versus like making the decisions, because then things feel like a fight.
Yeah. It's actually bodily. The flow of life is a pleasant experience. It's relaxed, it's soft. It feels like flow. If it doesn't feel like this, then you're not in the flow of life. I don't know how else to say it. It feels so simple that it feels almost embarrassing to say it like this.
Yes, I recognize that. And in my own situation, I was clearly not in the flow and fighting because I had a lot of angst and distress around the decision.
I'm appreciating that you're bringing this. When we have a lot of angst and distress, we're not actually in a position to lead a decision-making process. We need another process first. That process can be trust building, conflict engagement, inner work on releasing something or another, not a decision-making process. For a decision-making process, we need our faculties fully on board.
I feel that a lot. And then, I mean, I resonate with that. And then in this situation, there was an external, in my case, this move, I just did my moving thing, and I needed to make a decision regarding a landlord and rent and that sort of thing. So I wasn't in a place to make a decision, and yet I needed to make a decision. And so it was wrenching.
You know the answer. Mourn, 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 mourn. And then you will have less distress and angst. You'll have more spaciousness even within this sucky situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I can see it in hindsight because I did that a lot of mourning, and also I was doing a lot of fighting to try to make the decision, so I could have softened. And ultimately it was in the flow of life for my own vision, like my purpose of liberation. It did create an openings and changes in me.
That's because we are in angst or distress and are not in the flow of life doesn't mean there aren't going to be benefits coming to us. We can act from distress and still gain benefit.
Yeah, I believe that. I'm wondering how to apply it to the decision-making stuff when there are decisions to be made. I guess it's
literally mourning because most likely you're not going to make the clearest, most life-affirming decision when you're under conditions of stress. That is well known. I didn't invent that one.
Yeah, and just having this overall lens, even if I can't access it in the moment, to have a sense of being more relaxed with that whole situation and knowing it's, you know, it's not fight or flight, it's not survival, I'll be okay. Even though
you might not be okay. You might not be okay. I'll be okay is not a sentence that I try to put in my mind, because fact of the matter is sooner or later I'll die. So I won't always be okay. I don't want to try to build trust by telling myself that I'll be okay.
Yeah, I think I was meaning more, I'll be okay with whatever, with not being okay. Like
that's different.
Relaxed with whatever is. I'll be.
Yeah.
There's a knowing in me somewhere. A part of me knows that I can be relaxed with whatever is, even though other parts are going through extreme distress.
Yeah.
And the decisions may not be the most clear, or the Okay, thank you. It's just like a framing.
Monique, you changed your mind?
Shauna, thank you for bringing it forward. It's exactly the situation I'm in. I just wanted to say that. What was really helpful in the breakout room was I realized how dysregulated I was around this situation, and that I came to the conclusion, with the concurrence of my teammates there, that this was not an advice process that I was looking for. And so you speaking to the fact that there's something else that needs to happen first. And I also really appreciate the idea that I too feel a great sense of urgency to, quote, solve this problem, because it's work related, right? There are consequences, there's external crap. And the truth is like, I could get fired, you know, and if I get fired, well, there's something to be mourned about around that. So thank you.
I think it's a different context than the one we're talking about here. Still, I want to say it. I've it's not accurate, articulated an understanding that there are 5 basic systems that are needed, that are necessary, and that exist implicitly or explicitly for any grouping of humans who are trying to do something together. 3 of those systems are within flow, which means we're doing what we know to do, where we have procedures, agreements, whatever, it's all happening. When flow is interrupted, which doesn't necessarily mean anything unhappy. Flow can be interrupted from a lovely contract coming. It can be interrupted from a project ending. It can be interrupted from all kinds of things. When flow is interrupted, if there's trust, we go into a decision-making process, look at needs, impacts, resources, what is the purpose, what is the capacity, all of that, make a decision and go back into flow. If there isn't trust, we don't have enough capacity to make a decision. We need to go to some conflict process first. That's the simple thing. We need a lot to make decisions, and the reality is that huge amounts of decisions in the world are made in suboptimal conditions.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm very happy to hear from you again, Natalie, and I would like to open up. I would like to believe that more people would be willing to bring their situations and what they were thinking about in the small group for us to look at together. So I'll hear from Kathy and come back to you later. Yes, Kathy.
Well, I had a bit of an aha, and I just want to share it to see if you have any feedback about this. First of all, it's helpful to have the process articulated. And especially the high trust versus low trust that someone asked about earlier. And I had this thought in this one of the organizations that I'm in to walk in with this committee that's making some decisions with high trust. No matter what the trust level is probably pretty low. I'm going to walk in with high trust and live from there. So that was just a little bit of an aha for me.
I love it because essentially, the lower the trust, the lower the capacity in a situation, the more is required of us to create change. It doesn't make it necessarily impossible. It just requires more of us. So if you can come in with trust, which then means you can bring positive energy. You can ask questions that bring in a yes. You can offer appreciations, acknowledgements. There are lots of things you can do when you come in and say, it's up to me to shift the energy in this group. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm relaxed. All right, Natalie, let's hear from you.
Yes. Can this be done between two people?
I don't see any reason not to.
Okay.
I don't think it was designed for that, but I don't see any reason not to. But then why would you want to call it the advice process? You can just call it dialogue if you want.
Yes, thank you.
Christine, you're another person I haven't seen in years. Wondering if you're up for sharing your thoughts, discoveries, anything.
Hi, Mickey. Nice to see you. Yeah, I'm really interested in this process, and you may or may not know that I'm working with Mary Goyer now, who's been working with you for a while and is very interested in the advice process. So in our business, and there's just 3 of us, we've been trying to implement it, and I just feel like I need to understand it a lot more. I'm not sure there's just 3 of us, it's not like a whole large group, and there is a lot of trust. So I don't know how necessary it really is to.
It probably isn't. I am in a group of 3. We live, 3 of us together, in a very intensive visionary service rigor orientation. And we both completely trust each other to make decisions and follow each other. And we don't. Not we don't trust. We don't make decisions on our own.
Yeah.
We don't want to. It's too weighty. We were not actually designed to be to function as individuals. Our organismic evolutionary makeup is collaborative, not individual.
Well, I can imagine, living together, there are so many things that are going to impact each other. And we're in a small business. It's hard, given that the other 2 people have young children. It's hard to find times to really meet and to talk things through.
Got it.
So, yeah, so we tend to want to take on the advice process, but then things get decided, and I think, well, I would have done that differently. So I guess I would like it to be more collaborative in that way.
I'm wondering if you're actually giving each other enough information asynchronously about what you're trying to do. Because if somebody says, I would have done it differently after the fact, I am hearing in this that they either they didn't have enough information to engage with previously, or they didn't have enough capacity to engage, even
Yeah.
though the information was there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Nikki. And again, I think it's the question of just really not having been able to find times to meet to address these issues. So I think we're coming to that and finding times, and we've been in and out of the town and the country and whatnot. So let's pull it together.
Yeah, I can tell you within NGL, because we are an online community that is global, which literally means there's never a time when all of us can be present. Never. Somebody's going to be asleep, no matter what. We do a lot of the work asynchronously in writing. So essentially, if somebody wants to make a decision of some kind, they put it in writing, what they want to do and why. And there's a period of time for others to give input.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that would be a good solution, and more consistent meetings that we can come together.
Yeah.
I'm really, really interested in this topic of trust and of agency that you mentioned. I found myself really getting stimulated by that because I find in my case, and I was thinking about Patricia and how she talked about, an employee coming to her with a lot of questions and such. I find myself second guessing myself a lot. Like I'm not 100% sure this is the accurate decision, and maybe it has something to do with, fear of getting it wrong. It goes pretty deep. And of course, growing up in acculturated to a patriarchal, hierarchical system, and, letting go of that agency and that trust.
Yes, being female within that system doesn't help a whole lot with having a sense of agency.
Yeah.
It takes enormous effort to overcome the you shall not make decisions. So the only advice I have to give you is to ignore your own thoughts, to take on a practice that you stop the internal second guessing, and you do whatever you set out to do, even if it feels extremely uncomfortable.
I'm working on that. Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mei Lu.
Hi, Mickey. Thank you very much for the information. And I'm very new to NGL and NVC, and I'm very curious when you mentioned the word morning, and I wonder if you can talk more about that, because it's a concept I find extremely resonant, but I don't know what exactly it means. Thank you.
I'm going to be crude and brutal. I don't know of proper mourning that doesn't involve tears.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, filling the gap between what is going on and what you want to see, which is so often huge. Filling it with tears, because if you don't fill it with tears, you're likely to fill it with violence.
Wow. Do I seek out support in times of mourning?
I think so, because the degree to which we have been acculturated not to do the mourning from very, very early on in life means that it's going to be quite hard for us to stick with it on our own. I've been on, I think I've been in all the world's continents, and I've never seen a place, not exhaustive, but everywhere that I've been, people apologize when they have feelings. When they express their feelings, they apologize. When they cry, they apologize.
Yes.
again, I look to infants. Infants are big teachers for me, especially in the last few months when I have been in the presence of an infant a lot. In the last several weeks, actually living with the infant. It's going to be quite tough to leave. In a few days, we're leaving, but that's a whole other story. But it's such an amazing opportunity to actually see who we are before we are tampered with. That's how I look at it.
That is very insightful, and it just reminded me of a story when I first, because I'm a filmmaker, and when I first started making films in the position of power as a director, I used to cry in front of my whole team, and I felt so embarrassed about that fact, and I learned to toughen up, and yeah, and now I'm realizing for the first time that, oh, I skipped the process of mourning.
Yes.
Yeah, and then maybe my actions result in more violence or more abrupt decision making.
Wow. I just want to be in silence for a moment to make room for this immensity of what you just touched on.
Yeah.
I've lost any embarrassment that I've ever had about feelings. I worked hard to recover my capacity to cry.
Wow. How does a team react to, someone in the leadership mourning? Does that affect the cohesion or?
I believe it increases the cohesion if you stick with it and if you bring the fullness of you forward and you normalize it, then people become more human together.
Right. Wow. That is a very big insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mei Lu, and I am hoping to hear from you again at some event or another and see what actually happened based on this insight.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Wow. This has never happened. I'm thinking we're going to end early because I don't see that there's more that people want to talk about. All right, Matua, lead on.
Yeah, this process of decision making is such a powerful tool, and as I'm moving back to home or moving back to my place of original, where I originally come from, our culture is so tied up in the strength and I'm the chief and I have the rules, and I'm slowly starting to realize that this way of living is creating this emptiness. Like the people have moved away from our home, and they're starting to realize that, oh shit, we need to let go of this, but then what are we doing? And this young boy comes along who's lived outside of his culture for all my life, come along with these ways of sharing my internal way of looking at things in such a way that they realize it's okay to actually be soft. It's okay to actually share this confused, because they're really confused. They're looking at me with this confused look, saying, you're like a 6'4" person and you're sharing this vulnerability like a woman, like a lady, yet it is so impactful, it's so powerful. And then having this ability to start to use it as a process of making decisions is, it's just making waves. Like more and more of my different houses, let's say, are starting to adapt this way making decisions, it's no longer from the top down. It's more like, fuck, we don't know what we do. Let's all connect with each other and see what happens then. And I'm like, wow, this is just amazing. Yeah, so.
I'm really glad to hear this. I'm realizing that what I was really hoping for is that people will have a specific question and we could actually walk through the steps and look at the practicalities of how we do this part, how we do this part, how we do this part, and really get our hands dirty. And it's not happening for some reason. I feel sad about that.
Yeah, because I can feel like, for me, it's like I'm scared to even offer what I'm doing because I don't even know what I'm doing. But it's something, I'm doing something, and in our breakout room, we did kind of reach a process, but the decision-making process, we realized that there is something else happening underneath that decision-making process that was there was like an inner almost like a mechanism that's wanting to first understand what is the intention of this person asking us. The question was, how do I initiate connection with NGL? And my thing was, what have you seen? Or what have you noticed that's made you ask this question? And what have you seen, let's say me do? What have you seen me do? Or what have you seen this person or something do? Because I want to hear, what have they saw inside this space, this group of people that are walking like with this light? What did you see? Because then from there, I can start to maybe find the next question.
Got it. I'm still eager to speak with someone who actually has a specific decision that they see that they could be making and walk through the steps. Dylan, is that what you have?
Well, I'm always nervous because it's a small one, but it's relevant to me in my life in this moment. So I said, okay. So my mother is turning 88 years old and she loves her garden, her backyard, and she would water it every day. And sometimes in the summer, she'd give it water in the afternoon, and she's getting too frail to do it. So I intended, when I was thinking about what you were saying, I was like, well, I'm going to ask my siblings, some 2 brothers and a sister, to contribute money to try and get some irrigation set up so she can keep her garden and not feel bad that she can't do it. But then my question was, when you were talking about where do you bring people into the process to include them, this is a high trust environment. So then instead of coming with a solution, I had thought to say, hey, this is what's going on for her. She doesn't want to put all the money to it. She doesn't have the money. Or like, should I ask for open-ended question about what do you guys think we should do? And I was going to do it one-on-one, or should I have a solution of, if you give a certain amount of money and you, we might be able to get the setup. That was what I was thinking about. So I don't know if that really fits, but I thought I'd bring it since you were asking.
Remember, I started from there's no right answer.
Okay, so there's no right question. They're all okay. Yeah.
The question is, it's not should I do this or should I do that? It's more think through what would happen if you did this and what would happen if you did that. What do you think would happen if you brought it into an open-ended thing? Do you think there is capacity within this family to engage in a generative process of mutual influencing?
Yes, I do. Of course, we also are in Boulder, Colorado, Phoenix, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona. So it's not a time differential, but it's not a. So yes, there absolutely could be if there was some kind of willingness. Everybody cares for my mom. They love her dearly as I do. So there would be a desire to be supportive. And I do think that they would be generative, and there might be some other solution that I'm not thinking of that could be revealed if I just said, hey, we all know
Okay.
how important this is to mom. What do you think? So yeah, I think so.
There is also something that is not an either or, which is you can propose your solution and simultaneously say, this is just as far as I've taken this. And maybe any one of you has a solution that would work better. I wanted to start somewhere so that it's less overwhelming to think about it.
My only grieving,
Hmm?
I'm open to
Okay.
anything. I get you that I could just be honest about what I've done so far, and that if you guys have any other ideas or other thoughts, it'd be great to hear. My sadness is that it feels like it's boiling down to money to get her the irrigation system, and people are tied, it's tied all over. So it's like, so I don't know what that means or not, but maybe there are other solutions that could arise. And I think being more open to the possibility of other solutions arising rather than going straight to money would actually be softer for everyone.
Here's just something that is coming to mind. Is she strong enough to cook?
No, she's cooking less and less. So she is becoming very frail. And my one brother lives with her. So that's been beautiful, beautiful. So grateful.
Okay, I just
what were you
even
thinking
though
of,
it's
though?
not a fit.
Yeah.
The image that I had is there are people who live on the same street that she does. I could imagine her having more friendships and more relationship if she cooks for people and people come and do the irrigation. So then she has company and the water gets irrigated. But that's just me.
That's a
require
lovely
any money.
solution, a lovely possibility to offer to share her company in one way or another while they water. And I think there are people on the street that know her and love her, and that she would feel she would not like it. She's Boston stock and very stoic, and she would have a very hard time receiving. And I have talked
Okay,
to her
so
a little
I
bit
don't
about
know.
that. But
I don't
yeah.
know the situation. I was just rose to the challenge of a solution that doesn't involve money.
You did. Thank you very much. And I will maybe even broaden who I ask then, to who I consider asking as a part of making a solution. Yes. I have one more question, and that is, I was going to not include my mother because she would say no right off the bat. But now if I'm talking about the neighbors, she would absolutely, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'll think about it more. And it became more complex than I thought already. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the consideration.
Crystal?
Yeah, what's alive in me from our exercise in our group is the decision-making process around bringing someone new into an organization. If I could just provide some context quickly. We just recently saw the Harvard case where the decision-making process of who gets admitted into college was called into question in terms of the advice process that they go through. And I'm wondering if you have any different perspectives on perhaps even bringing someone into NGL, of how this advice process might change, or if you could walk through it, that would be amazing.
I think, I don't know what you were saying about college. I missed some words, so I didn't hear fully what you said.
Yeah, so I was just referring to how we integrate a new person into an organization, much like the challenges that are being faced by an organization like Harvard, that their process for integrating new people into college was called into question, and that they had an eye towards diversity of thought in terms of who do I ask and who do I bring in? And I was just hoping that you could speak to when you're bringing in new people into an organization, how this advice process might loop. And, you know, if you could even walk through it, say if someone wanted to join NGL, if it might change or be different.
I think that there's a difference between getting into the content of what I personally think is needed to join an organization and how somebody would run an advice process about that. Do you see? Those are two different questions. And I want to know which of them you want. I want to answer the second, not the first, basically.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. And so if I am thinking, let's say I am Harvard, and I am thinking, who am I within Harvard who is going to be redoing the decision? Can you give me an imagination of who I am?
Yeah, so it would be the advisory team. They have a team that actually reviews applications.
Okay. Do we want, so I'm a member of the advisory team. Do we want to change it, or was there like a mandate from high up that we must?
There was a mandate that you must change the process.
Yeah, so then it's already not an advice process because it is not voluntarily started within me.
Right. It raises the question of legal systems interfering in the advice process that organizations choose to implement for what they say is caring for the whole. Yeah.
It would be entirely different if the regents or whatever they're called, the people who run the university, were to say, we got legal feedback that we must change the way that we're doing this. And we want to start a process to see what is a way to address the legal challenges that were given to us that is simultaneously aligned with our purpose as a university, with our selection criteria, with all these different things. What is a pathway that would be integrative of dealing with this? And who do we need to ask? Oh, the admissions team. We probably need to ask a random sample of students. Do you see what I mean? That would be very different. If they just give a mandate, then it's no longer an advice process.
Understood. Yeah, it's looking for that opening. And they did, in fact, find an opening. So I was just curious about the process overall in terms of integrating systems like the legal system. And so I hear your answer and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm gonna end now and just move to closing because we have only 3 minutes. And I would like to hear from a few people, especially people who haven't yet participated. What's something you got from being here today? What's something that you imagine you will be able to actually apply in decision-making in your life, or that you appreciate as an insight?
The great benefit of using the community or using the organization, using the great benefit of not taking on the burden and allowing for more eloquent solutions to arise or suggestions.
Thank you. Patricia?
That there's impact no matter which way you slice it, and you have to deal with that impact after the decision is made.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that this is being restated right at the end. Thanks. What else? What are you taking with you? What was useful? Monique?
The humility required to really assess my own capacity to enter into an advice process.
Yeah. Thank you. What else? Dylan?
That whenever anybody is just talking to me, they're expressing what's important to them and what their needs are. And also to not limit the word need to the NVC definition of a specific need, but within this process to expand it to include what is important, what matters to people. That's really clear. Thank you.
Yes, we are always expressing our needs. It doesn't mean we make it easy to understand what the need is. Yeah, thank you. Beth?
I forget the term you used. It involved the word threshold, but where you phrase something to allow and invite actual responsiveness rather than just setting it up in a way that people don't really experience that they can respond.
Yeah.
What was that term? Something threshold.
I don't remember what you're referring to.
Like when you you're talking to a group or somebody's saying that when you were the example you had was signing the contract, and is there anybody who's not ready to sign the contract? So instead of saying that,
that's a
very
yeah, that's a very high threshold that would be very difficult to cross.
Yeah,
I can lower the threshold by changing the question as I suggested to him that he would.
So would it be like a threshold of responsiveness?
A threshold of dissent.
Of dissent. Okay. Thank you.
All right, everyone. The bell is rung. I'm appreciating your company. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, everyone.
Love to all. Bye-bye.
Best wishes.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mickey, can you hear me? This is Beth.
She's gone, Beth.
Ah, okay. Who am I speaking with?
Shauna.
Oh, Shauna. Okay, so nobody who's hosting the call is still available.
I'm technically hosting the call.
Cheryl's
I'm
here
Cheryl.
doing tech. She's here.
Okay, Cheryl, then can I speak with you for a moment?
Go ahead.